In the previous section, we have used Elasticsearch Operations class from Spring Library to run queries against Elasticsearch. There is an alternative way of doing that, which actually ends up with a less code, although you might lose some flexibility. This is the way of using Elasticsearch repositories. First, a bit of config changes are necessary to be able to use Elasticsearch repositories. Please go to the Elastic Config module, Elasticsearch Config class, and add a bean to return an Elasticsearch REST template. By using the Elasticsearch client as a parameter that we defined previously. And then also add Enable Elasticsearch Repositories annotation to this class with the base packages com microservices demo Elastic Index client repository. This is required for Spring to scan and find Elasticsearch repositories. Then let's create a package repository and then add an interface Twitter Elasticsearch Index repository, which we will mark with repository annotation, which is one of the ways of marking a class as a Spring bean. And this one is used for classes that are in persistence layer and has data interactions. Then we will extend Elasticsearch repository with Twitter index model and string generic types. And then create Twitter Elastic Repository Index Client class that implements Elastic Index Client. We will mark this class with service annotation. And we also use primary annotation here to make this one as the primary implementation of Elastic Index Client interface. Because by adding this, we will now have two implementations. One is the Twitter Elastic Index Client we created in the previous section, and also this class, Twitter Elastic Repository Index Client. We need to tell Spring that we want to load one of them. We cannot use two at the same time if we want to rely on the interface Elastic Index Client and use it. So one of the ways of choosing an implementation is using primary annotation, so that one has priority to the other one. We will implement Elastic Index Client by replacing the generic type with Twitter Index model, and then we will create a log variable here. Then inject the newly created Twitter Elasticsearch Index repository. In the same method, we can simply call the repository's saveAll method by passing the list of documents directly as the parameter, which will return an iterable that we can parse to a list of objects again. Then let's get the IDs from the result list. And then log a message as we did in the previous section with an info message. As you see, with repository, it is easier to write Elasticsearch operation code, but it has less control than using Elasticsearch operations class, which allows working with a low-level Elasticsearch queries. We will see the difference more clearly when we write Elastic Query Client in the coming sections. Now please stop the video and make these two Elastic Index Client implementations interchangeable. That means instead of primary annotation, I want you to use a different way to enable one of the implementation by using a configuration variable. We did a similar thing in previous sections, so please try to implement this on your own. Alright, I hope you worked on it. Let's now do the change together. I will first delete the primary annotation, and then instead add a conditional on property annotation, but this time to both implementation classes. As a property, let's create a property is repository under elastic config prefix and then use it in this conditional on property annotation. If the property is missing, let's load the repository implementation as a primary one. We will also add conditional on property annotation to Twitter Elastic Index client class and use having value false. Since we updated the configuration file for Kafka to Elasticsearch by adding isRepository property, now we need to commit and push our config server changes. Because Kafka to Elasticsearch will read the config data from remote GitHub repository, so we need to push our configuration changes to remote GitHub. We will be running our service by switching these two implementations in the coming two lectures. Alright, I will see you in the next section.